Hey everybody, this is Scott Aaron from Success Made Simple here on RVN TV every Wednesday from 1:30 to 2 p.m. This show is dedicated to bringing on authors, speakers, motivators, inspirational people that are on that journey to helping others succeed. And the point of the show is to teach people that success is not simple, but it takes simple decisions to create the success that we truly deserve. So I'm really excited about today's show. Today's guest I've known for almost 2 decades now, and through his own personal journey, ups, downs, triumphs, things that have come up, not only has he inspired tens upon thousands, but he is starting a movement for others to believe in themselves. Through being a brain cancer warrior, also being a TedX speaker, and now best-selling author, he's now helping people overcome their own triumphs and tragedies and turn them into their own successes. So it gives me great pleasure to announce Matt Newman. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Scott. I really appreciate it.
So, obviously things have come full circle for us.
Yes, they have.
Coming back around and now being able to do this interview. So, how I like to start every interview and every show is, everyone sees the glory of where people are right now. Mm-hmm. They see you doing all these talks, your book, another one eventually on the way, but they don't know the story behind where you got to right now.
Sure.
So how I like everyone to begin is go back growing up, things that you learned, maybe some impactful moments, before all of the things that are going on now. Maybe some things that you took away from life experience as a kid that really had you realize that, life is much more than what people may have it seen or what it's looking like, what everyone is doing. So can you recall any impactful moment or any conversation you had with anyone that really kind of set you on that path to really wanting more?
Sure. So growing up where I did, up in northern Jersey, one of the things you saw was that my family was very close, but my father, in my teenage years, became a financial advisor. You learn a lot of things about life. You learn a lot of things about careers by soaking things in at young ages and then understanding them later on. So I saw my father get into the financial planning industry, and you started to learn basics that you really didn't understand were basics then. They were just what my dad was doing. Mm-hmm. So when I graduated college in 1996, I went to the University of Delaware. And I remember when I graduated, my father coming up, they're all proud, they're all excited. He said, what do you think you're going to do now? So I'm going to join your firm, Dad. I'm going to start working with you. And my father's very nice Bronx accent, he used some expletives and told me there was no way I was going to be joining his firm. And I was not happy. But what he was giving me was a great lesson. He said, if you want to be in this business, get your licenses, learn it, see if it's something you adopt, see if it's something you want to be part of, and we'll talk in a few years. As angry as I was, what he was basically saying is there's no free lunches. You got to go out and earn it. And by going out and earning it, I decided to get into the finance industry. One of the things I took on that I learned was every product that we're going to utilize, that we're going to sell, you either own it or someone in your family owns it. It's that important that if you believe in it, you can give it to other people. Number 2, which I think is unbelievably important, is always think about the end users. It's not always about the person who's selling a financial product. It's the person at the end of the day that's going to receive it to make sure that they can have independence and dignity when they need it the most. Right. That if something bad happens, there's good news there for the family because planning was done in advance. Nobody plans to fail. They fail to have some type of plan. And number 3 was always be honest. I took those 3 things that I learned from my father and I started in something called wholesaling. Wholesaling would be a company that manufactures mutual funds, annuities, life insurance. Then they send wholesalers out to work with financial advisors to show them where their products fit, where they don't fit, when they should utilize them. So wholesaling became a passion for me because of the great lessons I learned growing up on the basics of financial planning. What's interesting about that is I made an oath to myself that everything I preached, I would practice. I spent countless events, presentations talking about planning in advance, doing the basics of financial planning. As you build families, having the proper insurance, doing wills, do little basic stuff that a lot of us don't want to do. People want these things when they can't get it. They want life insurance when they can't get it. They want long-term care. They want some type of plan when they get killed in the market and they don't know what to do. I was going to be the opposite. I was going to be the shoemaker whose kids had shoes. And I'll never forget, after being diagnosed with brain cancer, I was in the hospital. My father sat down with me, and I pulled out my will. I was 39 years old. I pulled out my insurance. I pulled out everything that I ever talked about, that I realized every story I ever gave was about me. And I showed it all to him. And that was the first time I saw my dad cry. Because I let him know that because all that was taken care of, I had one goal, and that was to beat this disease. Because I didn't have any regret, I didn't have any resentment, all the basics of planning were done. And that was an amazing lesson that I soaked in over the years, and I was able to utilize to help me take on the next challenge that I had.
And it's interesting, I just recalled something. I remember when we first met, when I was around 18 or 19.
I remember that.
And before Transamerica, I think you were doing some work with ING.
That's correct.
When they first came out, and you actually introduced me to saving money.
I remember the conversation.
And you told me, like, open up, it's called ING Direct, and you can link it right to your bank account, and you can save money. And I had this ING card, and I'm like, So there's such an important lesson to be learned in planning, because I can even tie it into the holidays right now.
Sure.
During the holiday season, this is the most anxiety-ridden time for most people. Because what do? They wait all year long to plan for certain things, and then they forget about all the gifts and all the presents they have to give. So they're now scrounging, and everything, halts. And now they're trying to figure out how they're going to have the money to buy all the things that they want to buy for everyone. They go into credit card debt. They're stressed out. It's causing tension in the family. And I believe the way that you do one thing is the way that you do everything. Mm-hmm. So if you learn from an early age to plan ahead, to make sure that you're really setting yourself up on a path to succeed, but just to be in as much control as you can be with life, it really reduces your stress, it reduces your anxiety. But your father kicking you out of the nest at such an early age, like graduate, and him saying, no, like you're not gonna have any handouts, you're gonna figure this out. So what can you say to people that they're our age, maybe older, maybe younger, they're still uncertain, they're unclear of their path and what they want out of life, because maybe they didn't have that life lesson that you had and that I had at a very early age, because you're never too old to learn how to change your life. So what's an actionable thing someone can do to really take control of their life right now?
Unfortunately, I would say we learn some of the most easy to understand lessons at some of the most daunting of times. When negativity often hits, we start looking through a different set of lenses.
Right.
We start seeing things differently. If you think about a football team, for instance, could you imagine a football team shows up on Sunday with no game plan and they put nothing together? The whole point is to put a plan in place prior to something happening. I think, the education system needs to change. I think we don't coach or teach our children as they go through grammar school, as they go through middle school, as they go through high school, the basics of planning. As you get older and you accumulate wealth, you should get a financial advisor, someone who will impartially make the best decisions for you because the emotion is not attached. But what about the kids who graduate from high school? They choose not to go to college, but they get married, they have children. They don't know what to check off for their benefits, what type of insurance to get, how much they're going to need. Basic things that we need to teach them, that life is fragile. We never know when things are going to happen. But having a plan in place alleviates stress at the toughest of times for families and allows them to focus on what they have to focus on. Unfortunately, we see too often that they're dealing with these awful situations, but they just got worse because now they need GoFundMe pages and all this other stuff. So the best lesson I would provide is always think in advance of the bad. Always think, if something bad were to happen, do I have a plan in place that would protect us as much as possible?
So why do most people not have a plan in place? And I mean, no one wants to think.
Well, I think it's a
for
lack
the
of
worst case scenario.
It's a lack of education. We don't educate people on this in school systems. There'll be an optional 9th grade program that you have the you could choose whether you want to go or not on the basics of this. I think there should be some type of financial planning that's taught through the high schools of America to give people a better idea of when they get into the real world, when they go to college and get a part-time job, what should they do just to make sure their bases are covered. We don't teach them what a 401k is. We don't teach them what the proper benefits to choose are. These are basics that can be fixed to give people more of an education. We educate them to get in the real world, but we teach them nothing about what to do with the money that they make.
It's so interesting because I always reflect upon, my journey, and I tell people I'm very transparent with my story. I was thrown into the working world running a business at 18 and a half. Those were the cards that were dealt to me. So I had no other choice but to have to move forward and figure it out. And I share with people all the time the greatest lessons that I've ever learned in life came from life.
Yeah.
They weren't in any textbook I ever read. I mean, we've all had great teachers along the way. But entrepreneurship, financial planning, all of the things that you have to figure out later on, the earlier that you can learn these things, the more successful people end up becoming because the plan's in place.
I agree with that. I also think there's a component to feeling bulletproof. To when you're young, you feel like you're indestructible. You could do anything. I don't need to do all this stuff. I don't need to worry about that. I'm good. I have no issues going forward. The reality is the older people that we deal with, they've seen a lot more go on than we have. And they understand that things could happen that are unexpected. Accidents could happen, diseases could happen. We don't know. But what's the downside of having some type of planning in place to protect loved ones when you need it the most? And I look at it as the job of the financial advisor, the people that I work with all the time, their job is to be there when things are bad.
Yeah.
Their job is to give some semblance of good news at the toughest of times to families to let them know there's one less thing that they have to worry about. The other thing that could happen is when we don't do certain things, we get regret, we get resentment, we get this negativity, and it could force us down this downward spiral that it's very difficult to get out of. We've all heard the story of the 50-year-old, the couple that's been married for 50 years, husband dies of cancer, woman's in great health. What do we find out happens 6 months later often? She dies because she goes down the spiral. Our job is to educate people to make sure that they have some type of plan in place to help alleviate as much of this negativity as possible.
So you've been speaking frequently for the last couple of years, and you speak at big events, intimate events, high-level executives, mid-level executives, all different types of people. And you've obviously spoken to a great number of people after these talks. What have you been learning from the people that you've actually been speaking to?
So one of the things I've learned, without question, is that cancer is like buying a car. When you buy a car, you leave the lot, and all of a sudden you go, oh my God, these cars are everywhere, I see them. Not true. The cars were always there. You just never had a connection with them to relate to them. That's the way cancer is. When I went through my experience, I put those new lenses on, like I mentioned earlier. I saw it everywhere. Some people want to talk about it. For me, it was comfortable to get it out of my system. It was cathartic. Some want to keep it to themselves and not share it with anybody. What I've noticed, though, is when I give these speeches, when people read my book, it helps them make some of the proper planning decisions because there's a connection. There's a connection with someone where you're not pitching them a product. You're not telling them why they should do something. They're understanding that I could go through that, or I am going through something like this. I had a family member go through it. I should really do some of these things to alleviate issues going forward. And that's one of the more gratifying things I get is that feedback that I'm doing something that I wouldn't have done before because I get it.
And you shared something with me earlier that a lot of people, when they're speaking, they're speaking about themselves, but not realizing at the same time that you're actually creating a bond and a relationship with the audience because stories literally change the entire game, whether it's written in a book, whether it's seen on YouTube, or whether it's at a convention that you're speaking at. So what is it about your story? And we're going to get into it a little bit later, but what is it about your story that people say, you know what, Matt, thank you so much. This is exactly what I needed to hear, even if they haven't experienced everything that you have?
Sure. So I'll make this point abundantly clear, and I say it all the time. Writing became my catharsis. It became my way of dealing with the anxiety that was pushed down through all the the morale that I had, the optimism, the I'm going to kill this thing, I'm going to kick this thing's butt. There's going to be a negative side of that. Writing became my catharsis. It's how I got things out of my system to make myself feel better. I truly believe that people are attracted to realness and purity. They're sick of the shtick. They don't want to hear somebody getting up telling them why they should do something. They want to hear a story that someone's been through that they can relate to, that they can digest, they can understand, and realize I need to do this for the right reason, not because someone was pitching something to me. And I wrote it for me. I wrote it because it made me feel better. I wrote it so my young kids, as they get older, would be able to read something of really what happened when they were too young to understand what was actually going on. I never anticipated it going the way that it's going. But I take a lot of appreciation in the fact that people are correlating themselves to doing the right things and understanding they're not alone on a lot of their journeys that they're on that seem very negative.
Absolutely, and you know, some of the best speakers start as the best storytellers. So after the break, I want to come back and I want to talk about starting at the finish line. So guys, everyone hang tight. We'll be back in a few minutes with Matt Newman, author and speaker of Starting at the Finish Line. See you in a few.
When others take the easy way, we take charge.
I work 13 hours a day, 6 days a week. So when I'm off the clock, I gotta get stuff done. So when I need a snack, I need something healthy, tasty, and easy to eat. Like wonderful pistachios without the shells. They're protein-powered, delicious, and great on the go. And that's perfect for me. Thanks, Liz. A woman without a lot of time.
Whether you're a gourmet cook or just want to eat like one, visit Rostelli Market Fresh, your home for the freshest, locally sourced ingredients to please everyone who loves great food. Our organic meats, quality seafood, and free-range poultry are cut fresh to order. Chefs create culinary-inspired prep foods made fresh every day, which pair nicely with our vast selection of fine wines and spirits. Choose from handmade pastas, artisan cheeses, organic produce, and grocery items, all from the finest purveyors. Rostelli Market Fresh, from our family to yours.
RVN TV is a platform for people of any industry to share their story. Over 285,000 viewers are tuning in to RVN TV shows monthly. We guarantee a great experience that you'll be sharing with everyone you know while increasing your personal and company's brand awareness. But what is your brand? According to Forbes, it's a combination of your logo, your product, your design and feel, and your personality. Did you know that aside from being a guest, we offer even more opportunity to boost your brand? Adding your company logo and website on screen during your interview will allow viewers to recognize your brand instantly. Incorporating images and video clips is another great way to showcase your product during your live segment. Let viewers see how good you really are. And most importantly, there's you and your interview. For less than the cost of a newspaper, direct mail, or a magazine ad, you can leave our studio and within 48 hours have a permanent...
Welcome back, everyone. This is Scott Aaron from Success Made Simple with TedX speaker and author of Starting at the Finish Line, Matt Newman. And where we left off is Matt's actually going to go into exactly how this book came about. So again, you realize through everything that you've done, you can plan as best as you can for life. And a number of years ago, you're hit with something that no one can ever fully plan for. Now, you were one of the individuals amongst the other guys at the gym that got me into health and fitness, along with my dad, and it's something that you've still been doing.
Absolutely.
And strangely enough, it was actually after something that you did, health and wellness wise, you started getting into some mud runs and some stuff with your wife. But go back and tell the story about how literally in an instant anyone's life can change, and instantly how your life was changed.
Yeah, sure. So in 2010, my father-in-law was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and it was very tough on my wife. She was pregnant, we had a 2-year-old, we had a 1-year-old, And my wife made it her full-time job to take care of her father. The fact that she was pregnant and 2 young children, she was going to do everything to try and help him. The average lifespan of pancreatic cancer is about 3 months. Because you don't usually realize the symptoms of it till it's spread around all over, and there's just very little you can do for that. He got a Whipple procedure, he went through chemo and radiation, and it was inspirational to watch him. He never complained, he never bitched. His goal was to see all his grandchildren born, to get them old enough to remember him, and he would do whatever was necessary. And it was a warrior that I was watching just take on every challenge and just sat there and dealt with it. His cancer became like a roller coaster. It would go from being good to being bad. Cancer does what it wants, when it wants. It doesn't care about the plans that we have. It doesn't care about our vacations. It's going to do what it wants. It's going to get aggressive when it wants. And his roller coaster would go up and down. 3 years into it, he was actually doing well. It was amazing what we were watching. And I was driving on an icy, miserable road on Route 202 in Bridgewater, New Jersey on one of those awful days. There's little fender benders all over the side of the road, and you're thinking, I'm just gonna do 30 miles per hour. I don't wanna deal with this. There's ice all over the place. And I pulled up to the traffic light, and my car shot like a rocket, hydroplaned into the car in front of it, tumbled over, went into the median. And I remember everything going in slow motion as the airbag came out, thinking, if all these signs I'm gonna hit go that way, I'm gonna walk away. If they come this way into the car, not good. So what happened is, signs went that way. I get out of the car's totaled, the police officer comes out and he goes, man, you gotta go to the hospital. I was like, no, I'm good, I'm okay. Type A personality, I'm thinking I'm gonna rent a car and continue to go on my way to work. I called my wife up and I told her, hey, I'm okay, the car's totaled. And she says to me, she goes, remember our friend Karen? We have a friend named Karen Mancini, gets T-boned in Yardley, Pennsylvania. Please tell her she should go to the hospital just to make sure she's okay. The police then tell her she should send a thank you note and flowers to the person who hit her because they found a brain aneurysm in her, and she would have been dead in 3 hours. I thought about my family, I thought about everything going on, and I went on my way. And I started to get these headaches that would not stop. They were unbelievably painful. I'd never had a headache before, never had a migraine, and my wife suffers from chronic migraines. So the fact that I didn't go to the hospital, she doesn't want to hear about my headaches when I did nothing about it, when she's taking care of her father and now taking him down to chemotherapy every day down at the University of Pennsylvania. So what happens is the headaches get worse, and I lost all my ability to sleep. I would pass out on the couch at 8:30 and wake up in massive pain at 10 o'clock. This is going on for 2-3 weeks, and I'm just thinking something is wrong here. What happens next is I'm giving a presentation. And there's about 100, 150 people in the room, and I do this all day long. It's fun to do. I got everybody all excited. We're going all through these different concepts and strategies in my business. And halfway through the presentation, I felt a hot flash hit me, just like a pregnant woman would go through. And when that hot flash hit me, I lost all ability to speak. Slur and gurgle just poured out of my mouth. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what was going on. I actually thought I was having a stroke. I remember seeing myself outside of my body going, you are having a stroke. It felt like an eternity. Maybe 5 to 6 seconds went by, and I kind of got myself together. I'm like, oof, didn't sleep last night. My kids are sick. Let's bounce right into this. I was scared out of my mind. I started to get these strokes more and more often. I was also getting worse head pain. Now I'm sleeping less and less. But we're focused on my father-in-law and trying to take care of him. So we did the Broad Street Run that May, and on May 14th, 2013, I'm giving a presentation, and I had my 11th one of these stroke things. And I'm just going, oh man. That was the moment I decided I'm going to the hospital right now. I can't take it any longer. My wife was shopping at the King of Prussia Mall. I met her at a place called Capitol Health, which is in Hopewell, New Jersey. We go in there, they go, Mr. Newman, we want to give you a CAT scan. No problem. Give me a CAT scan. They come back about an hour or so later and go, we think we know the problem. I'm like, yeah, diagnose it, fix it, what's going on? You have a lesion right here. My first thought, Scott, is I must have hit my head in that car accident. I don't remember, because a lesion's like a bruise. I'm like, yeah. They go, you are having massive pain. I'm like, oh, you don't know the half of it. Can't sleep. I go, yeah. You're not having strokes, Mr. Newman. You're having seizures. And it's on the left frontal lobe of your brain, which is speech and memory. This sounds like it would be tough to digest. I'm like, yes, that's the issue. It's been 4 months, thank God. What do we got to do? So I got to go in for MRIs, MRAs, all these other tests. Hours and hours go by, and now they want to do it with contrast. So at 3 in the morning, Rebecca says to me, who's my wife, I'm gonna go home, get my dad ready to go for chemo. I gotta find someone to take him. I'm gonna make lunches for the kids who are all under 4 years old, and I'll be back at 5:30. Yeah, no problem. So they bring in a wheelchair and go, we gotta bring you down. I'm like, no wheelchair. I just ran the Broad Street run. I'll walk. There's liability in a hospital. You gotta get in a wheelchair. So they put me in the wheelchair, and the woman comes up behind me and she goes, all right, Mr. Newman, let's see. MRI, MRA, contrast. We gotta see how big your brain tumor is. And that was the moment at 39 I found out I was diagnosed with brain cancer.
39.
And my head ran all over. I sat in the tube for about an hour and a half. They brought me back to the bed. They hooked me up to all these machines. And I have no problem telling you, I just sat there and started crying. I started to have retrospective on my life. There was obviously something I did that caused this. Thinking about myself as a father, thinking about myself as a son, thinking about myself as a husband. And I wish I could tell you differently. But people think strength is the size of your arms, how strong you are. Untrue. Strength is something that's found down in your belly at the deepest and darkest of times. And if you grab it and you own it, every one of us has access to that. The question is, can you do it and will you do it? And I must have grabbed something and I just started cursing my brains out. All the nurses come running in who still tell the story to this day. Oh my God, Mr. Newman, are you okay? And I said, I'm fine. That was my pity party. I had a father-in-law dying of pancreatic cancer. I had 3 kids under 3 years old. I had one job, and that was to fight with everything I had to make sure I was there for my family and there for my kids. I didn't know I had that in me, but it was there. And when I found it, it was something I said I would never let go.
It's really hard to conceptualize what can actually go through your mind when you're thinking about yourself, but at the same time, you're thinking about your father-in-law. You're thinking about your wife. You think about your kids.
Think about your parents hearing your son has brain cancer. We all know that means your son's going to die. That's the perception. Doesn't mean it's the reality. But yeah, all that's going through your mind.
So take us through, obviously, battling brain cancer, how you really started to reflect on the just life in general and how precious it really is. And what inspired you to write this book, starting at the finish line? And what's your message for people now?
Yeah, so it's interesting that I had to go through a craniotomy. They had to cut half my head off, pull that off, pull the jaw, and take the tumor out. I then had to go through chemo and radiation. And it was what it was. Was it easy? It was a no, but I told you before I was looking through different lenses. My perspective changed. I was understanding life differently. I was seeing not only the fragility, but I was having a different type of appreciation of what was going on, things I didn't appreciate in the past. And I'll give you an example. When I came out of the hospital, and I'll never forget my little kids waiting for me at that door, and the appreciation I had of that moment. But on the 5th day that I was out of the hospital, my 5-year-old son was having a Father's Day picnic at his school. And I couldn't drive, I couldn't do anything. I had like a second head, so I'd have to wear a hat. So my wife says, you don't have to go to this. I go, there's no way I will miss this. Never will I miss this. So that morning we go drop my kids off at school. I take my 2.5-year-old daughter, Lola, in her little pink jacket. I take her down to her class, and she takes her little pink jacket off, and she hangs it on the hook. And she gives me a look, and she goes, thank you, Daddy, for taking me to class. I love you. And at that moment, I thought, why don't I do this more? Because I always looked at it through my eyes. My eyes were, I got to get to work, I got to do this, I got to make money, I got to do all this other kind of stuff. I never looked at it through her eyes. And through her eyes, I might have just created a memory for her of her dad taking her to school and something she would look back on and reflect on. And I thought I was really selfish. But I also thought, this is a gift I'm getting through what I've been through. Right. Why am I looking at it this? Why am I understanding it more? So my wife says to me that day, you do not have to go back to that school. You look banged up. I go, I wouldn't miss this for the world. They take me back. Luke comes out, my 5-year-old gives me a big hug. Daddy, thanks. We grab our brown bag lunch. We walk back into the backyard, and every dad is sitting there with their son. And I saw every dad holding their cell phone up like this. And I thought, oh my God, that was me. That was me. This is their lunch. It's their 30-minute memory. And I had to go through brain cancer to realize that I need to make it about them, not just show up and make it about me. And what I started to do as my catharsis was send emails out. I started to write about my perspective, my thoughts, and it was almost like vomit. I would get it out of my system. It would make me feel better. I would get it out and I would email it out to friends and family. 3-4 years into it, we had 20,000 people following the email list.
Wow.
Because cancer was everywhere. People would say, hey, Scott, I have a friend, a brother, this, that. Could you put them on your list? And I never really thought about it because I did it for me. I didn't do it for anybody else. And when I started to see the reactions we were getting in the cancer support groups and the helping, that's what led me to writing the book.
So as we come to a close for today, what's the basic premise of the book? How can people find it? Where can they get it? And what's the mission and how do you want to leave people?
Yeah, so it's on Amazon.com. You can get it on Goodreads. You can get it on BarnesandNoble.com. Amazon's probably the easiest. The goal of what I hope people take from that is 3 things. I hope they know they're not alone on their journey. Cancer affects every family in every way. Number 2 is I hope people who've been through it can get some inspiration from it, can know that there's some diseases there's nothing we can do. Cancer may take you physically. It will never take you spiritually and will never define your legacy. Don't allow it to do that. It's my journey. Cancer's just along for the ride. And whatever it's going to do, I want to be remembered, not the cancer component of it. But it's also to let people know, do the proper planning. Do something in advance so when something bad happens, you could focus your energy on that fight. And all the speeches that I do is to help inspire families, to let them know they're not alone in what they're doing, but more importantly than that, share realness. We don't have to give golf balls to somebody. We can give them something real that they can connect with that helps them get through some of the challenges they go through in life.
I love that. And I finish every interview this way, and there's no right or wrong answer. What does success mean to you?
I get more satisfaction today out of messages I get from people that are thankful that they were able to read something that helped them go through a difficult time. I never thought of that as success. I do today.
That's awesome. Matt, honor and a privilege to have you on the show
honor was
today.
all mine, Scott. Thank you so much for
Thank you
having
so
me.
much for sharing the story. So guys, as you can see, as always, success has different meanings to different people. Whether it's giving back, whether it's paying it forward, or just leaving people better than the way that you found them. Success is always made simple. So guys, have a great rest of your day. This is Scott Aaron from Success Made Simple, and I'll see you every Wednesday on RVN TV from 1:30 to 2 p.m., and I'll see you next week. Take care.
Copy of your live segment to link to your social media. Embed in